everyone, and welcome to the Cambridge Union. It's an absolute pleasure to have so many of you here today to join us for this fantastic speaker event. Just a couple of things from me before we start. The first is that we're currently filming a documentary about Caroline Calloway. So please do sit on the rafters, which are just upstairs, if you wouldn't like to be filmed. So we'll be filming the entire event in the chamber. The second is that we'll have a social in the cellars right after, so please do head downstairs for that. But without further ado, I'd just like to introduce our guest tonight. So tonight we have Caroline Calloway, who rose to fame while studying history of art at the University of Cambridge and became known as the Gatsby of Cambridge. She is the author of the 2023 best-selling and critically acclaimed memoir, Scammer, the title of which references accusations of scamming that she has received from both critics and fans alike. Please welcome to the chamber, Caroline Calloway. It's an absolute pleasure, like I said, to have you.
Honestly, this is so special for me.
The way this is going to work is like most of our other speaker events. For those of you who might be new here, we're just going to have a quick 30-minute kind of conversation, Q&A, before I hand over to the audience for your opportunities to ask Caroline questions as well. But to begin with, I think the question on everyone's minds is why the Cambridge Union? Why now, right? I mean, when you moved to Florida, you threw away your passport. You said you weren't going to move anywhere.
Well, allegedly. It's actually, I found out it's a federal offense to destroy a U.S. passport. So allegedly, I threw my passport in the ocean.
But I guess the question then is, when I sent you that invitation a couple of months ago, why kind of say yes and accept it?
I feel like the only people who reject coming to the Cambridge Union are the same activists who reject a knighthood. Like there is a slim part of celebrities that see it as offensive, but the vast majority, especially the Cambridge students, I mean, your Wi-Fi password is Stephen Wi-Fi. Stephen Fry has been here 50 times. I feel like for a student coming back, it's such an honor because you saw people coming here who were accomplished, who had careers that you aspired to, and you came to these events and then you're invited to host the event. I mean, how could you possibly say no? Especially because I could drag all of my friends from London to the event, so.
And I guess kind of building on that, so you kind of touch a bit there on your time at Cambridge. What would you kind of sum up that experience like? I mean, you could talk about the union, did you come to union events, or were you kind of the type of person that had a life kind of its own?
Honestly, I only ever came to one union event. It was, I'm gonna butcher this Irish name, it was Owen Colfer. He wrote Artemis Fowl, and maybe 3 people came to his event. It was at noon in the middle of the day. I think I might have skipped a lecture to be there.
Oh my gosh.
And I just loved Artemis Fowl as a child, so I went to that, and that was my only experience with the union.
Yeah, and then kind of now, kind of coming back to Cambridge, I guess I'm kind of curious, what do you think has kind of changed? What do you find has stayed the same?
There are a lot of new buildings. They demolished the Clare, Gardner house into a strange reading room. There's a new building in Magdalen that I don't remember on the river. And what's the same is, I feel like when you graduate Cambridge, you grow into a different person, and that's so lovely. And it's so lovely to come back, but you also slip into the ghost of who you were when you were here. I find myself almost regressing. So that's what hasn't changed.
And I guess looking back on your time at Cambridge and kind of the experiences that you had, I guess you talk a lot about this in your memoir, which we will get onto. But I guess I was kind of curious, if you had to kind of think about your time at Cambridge, what you enjoyed, and obviously you talk about in your memoir the things that you didn't really enjoy as well. If you had to do that all over again, what would you do? Is there anything you would change? Is there anything you would keep the same?
I would change everything. I would not get addicted to amphetamines. That was a terrible mistake. 0 out of 5 Yelp stars, would not recommend to a friend. It was so bad. And it also it also ruined Cambridge when I come back, because like I lived in this beautiful room in King's and Bodley's Court for my last year. And when I punt past it, or even just like walk past it going through King's, all I think about is just being so high on Adderall, like clipping my fingernails down to the quick until they bleed, and like rearranging my like Spotify playlists. And I wish that I'd spent my time in these beautiful castles healthier. There's so much I would have changed.
And I guess this is something, obviously, your addiction is something that you talk about in your memoir. But I think, and coming on to this, I think the types of things you talk about in your memoir, right? I think they're kind of different in that they are quite a radically honest picture of who you are.
Thanks.
And you talk about the good things, but you also talk about the bad things as well. And I guess touching on that, is that something you decided that you wanted to do in terms of you wanted to tell the entire story? Or did you find yourself kind of picking up memoirs and reading them and kind of seeing what you liked and what didn't really stick?
Yeah, when I started at Cambridge, I've always felt like the moment that I learned what a writer was like the moment I wanted to be a writer. And like the moment I learned what a memoirist was like the moment I wanted to like be a memoirist. Like learning those words and wanting to be that thing were like the same memory for me. And so I always knew that I wanted to do that at Cambridge. And so going here, I just felt like I was completing something in a strange way.
Yeah. And I guess with that, and this is something I think comes really clear at the start of your memoir, you kind of make this distinction between Caroline Calloway, the character, in terms of Caroline Calloway, the person. You talk about there are certain things that you did because Caroline Calloway, it just seemed like the type of thing Caroline Calloway, the character, would kind of do.
I know it's tough to remember, but there really was a time on the internet where like the standard Instagram post was like an aerial shot of avocado toast, and you would like put the Valencia filter, and then like the caption would just be #Valencia. Like it's hard to remember how different the climate of social media was. And when I was making my brand in 2013 and 2014 and 2015, I felt like I was really radical. I was like writing about how I missed my boyfriend in New York. I was meeting this new boy in Cambridge, and it felt like the radical frontier of vulnerability on social media. And obviously looking back on it now, compared to like what people share about, gosh, everything on social media, it seems really fake and plastic. But the truth is, at the time, I was being as vulnerable as I could to my audience. And the truth also is that I hid all the darkness in my life. It's tough because one part of me thinks, like, you don't have an obligation to share that. Like, if you really are going through something terrible, you don't have to post about it on social media. But part of me also feels so much regret for, I don't know, people come up to me and they're like, I applied to Cambridge and went to Cambridge because of your Instagram. And I'm like, oh no, that wasn't even my real life. And it's tough to reconcile those two feelings, that you don't owe the truth, but like I regret not giving more of the truth.
And I guess, what would you say when, especially to someone who might be writing, or even thinking about writing about themselves and writing a memoir, what would you say is kind of a good guiding principle of like what you do share and what you don't?
That's a great question. Okay, on the internet where people can comment, this is actually like the first question that I really know the answer to. On the internet, do not share anything you're not ready to be criticized for. Like if you're not stable enough in that vulnerable moment that you're sharing and you know what happened and you know how you feel about it, do not share it. The comment section will send you on a rocky, wild road. But when you're writing for a book, something that's not shared so much, I really think that you should write as if you were dead. To just write like you have already died and there'll be no consequences for what you say, and that you should just say the most honest, like you should walk along the ocean floor of like the truth of what you feel.
I guess talking like the thing about writing as if you were dead, right? So looking back.
Is a Kate Zimbino quote? Where as well? It's a Kate something quote.
But writing as if you were dead, and then kind of looking back at Scammer, and then looking at the books that you do want to write in the future, what's the legacy that you would say you want to leave behind?
Okay, this is a great question, and I'm so glad you asked it.
Okay, amazing.
So here's the plan. This is my second time speaking at the Union. The first time was over Zoom. It was very Timothée Chalamet hosting SNL the first time. It doesn't really count, but like this, he recently hosted it the second time, and he was like, finally, I'm here in person. And that's very much how I feel about speaking at the Union for a second time. What I want my legacy to be is that you know how there's certain characters like, I don't know, like Andy Warhol or Elizabeth Wurtzel or Oscar Wilde or Kat Marnell or just Julia Fox,
yeah,
or people who are just, they've never been seen before. Like, I want to wrap up strange American wonder and British castles and intense suicidal depression and just the nastiest details of mental illness and the most beautiful sentences and riverbanks and castles for the second time, and because the castles are very important. And I just want to wrap them into a person, and flowers in the hair. I didn't have enough time. It's actually been a crazy day. I can't even get into it. But I want to wrap them all into a person and a brand and a legacy of books that's never been seen before and like will never be seen again. Like, I want to be like a figure that lives on. I can't wait for my third Union talk.
And I guess with that, because we keep coming back to this idea of brand and character, I guess where would you say you separate the line between you as a person and you as a brand and as a character?
When I was younger, in my early 20s, I couldn't separate it at all. It was the same thing. But I saw how unhappy that made me, not just like emotionally, but like financially. Like, I got into like $100,000 worth of debt. Like, that's not healthy. And so I sold this book that I didn't want to write about the character that I was trying to be, and having to pay that back, and also having to play that. It's strange because it's sort of like a frog trying to kill itself in a pot of boiling water. It's so gradual that you don't jump out, like trying to present yourself on social media as this like beautiful thing. Like, it starts with one photo and next photo and the photo after that, and then suddenly you're locked in a cage of your own making of your like social media image. And yeah, I did that when I was younger, and it was so awful, it broke me. I got addicted to amphetamines, got out of that book deal, paid the $100,000 back, and was like, that was a lot, I'm never doing it again. So like, my social media now is very distant from my life. Like, I just post the critical success of Scammer is like the whole Instagram. It's like just the glowing reviews. And I now, at 31 versus 21, I no longer see myself as a character. I see myself as someone who has like a much better control of living the plot.
And I guess with living the plot and the stuff that you talked about in your early 20s, and now looking back as a 30-year-old and in your 30s, how would you say you were able to bounce back from that and build the resilience that you needed to? Therapy.
Duh.
I think a lot of people need therapy.
I spent like a year going to therapy like 3 times a week.
But would you say that it's also therapy and then building up a community of people?
No.
Just therapy. Just therapy?
Yeah,
Is that your word of advice to anyone?
What?
Is that your word of advice to anyone?
Everyone should be in therapy, literally.
I think that's really good advice. But I guess with then the internet and the things that you choose to post, coming back to your memoir and talking about the terrible things that happened to you, but also being honest about not being a perfect person, and that I think human beings are allowed to be flawed, right? How would you say you prepare yourself, or you prepared yourself in this context, to be okay with the fact that people were going to make criticisms about deeply personal things that you were sharing for the first time?
Honestly, I had the most amazing editor who I just think is the best writer in the world. and he really supported me. And I had some other editors who are also the best writers in the world. And I honestly had to just shut out what the consequences would be, and I just tried to do the writing as if already dead. Like, I just tried to write a book that would be interesting in 100 years from now, not something that would have consequences in the immediate future. I don't want to ruin anyone's life. When I say consequences, I mean, like, for me, like things that I divulge that people would judge me for, or whatever. Like, I just try to shut it out and write the most honest thing I can.
But I think when, especially in Scammer, you talk about things that you haven't for the first time, right? And you give your side of the story. Did you not find yourself, especially in the immediate aftermath, being a bit hesitant about that criticism or what you chose to share because of the way people reacted?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Duh.
So, but how would you say you found yourself kind of dealing with that?
No, it was really the encouragement of my editors.
Yeah.
Like, I really was so lucky.
Did you ever find yourself having to like shut off your phone and kind of stay away, or did you?
I've quit Instagram like twice for 18 months. Once when I was like getting help for Adderall addiction, and then once after just like writing Scammer. Like,
yeah.
I unfollowed everyone. I left Instagram, and I just like, I don't have a feed. Like, I can't even access that if I wanted to.
And I guess delving into some of that criticism, I think one of the things that stands out, and you talked about this previously, is you get a lot of criticism for the character that you've built, right? I think a lot of people love you, a lot of people also really dislike you. Would you say that a lot of that criticism is because of the fact that you are a woman? Would you say that you would get this character, right? If you packaged up this character and it was a man that inhabited this character, would you say that this character would still get the same sort of criticisms? Or do you think there's an element of that it is because a woman?
I definitely think that a young man publishing a book, a young up-and-coming man at Cambridge, would not be so pressured to make their plot in their late teens and early 20s about finding a wife at Cambridge in the same way that I felt pressured to make myself mainstream marketable by making it about my relationships and things that like mirror rom-coms. But other than that, I feel like there's just I get the same sexism as everyone else. It's not special.
Yeah, and how do you think, kind of, especially when you're writing something like this, right? And the fact that maybe a man wouldn't get the same criticisms, does that make you reconsider like anything that you write, or do you just see it as something?
I do not write for straight men.
Yeah.
I only write for the girls and the gays. So they're just like, they're not even like on my radar. Like, it's just the girlies and the gays that I make art for.
And the other kind of criticism that I wanted to delve into, and I think this is especially the case because of the audience that we're in. I think in Scammer, you talk about the way that you got into Cambridge, right? I think I have a couple of questions on this, but I think the first one is, why Cambridge of all places? I mean, why not Oxford? Isn't that more British and more prestigious?
I feel like Cambridge is very much the Harvard of England in the sense that it's more sciencey, it's more quiet, it's more... I don't know, straight-laced.
Yeah.
And Oxford is very Yale, it's near New York, and there are weird parties. I know this is so silly, but I really chose Cambridge because my father, when I was little, always said, like, I can't wait to visit you in Cambridge someday. But he meant American Cambridge because he went to Harvard.
Yeah.
So and I genuinely picked it because it just sounded more like Caroline. I swear to God.
I think, well, I'm biased. I chose Cambridge too.
What?
I chose Cambridge too, but I guess like reading in your memoir, it's so much of Cambridge is kind of shadowed.
It also felt like, when I said earlier that learning about like what a writer was and what a memoirist was the same moment that I decided to be that. I also felt that with Cambridge. Like, as soon as I learned about what this was, I was like, immediately yes. I don't need to hear, I've heard what I needed to hear, and immediately yes.
And then thinking about, you read history of art, but you always seem to, especially reading your memoir, know that you wanted to be a writer at a very young age. So I guess, why choose history of art over
Because
English?
I knew that writers nowadays need to have a social media presence. And I really thought that learning about composition and what the human eye is drawn to, and just being bombarded by the best images in the world, I thought that would really help me. I thought, one, I would like it. I just love it. It was fun, and it was pleasurable, and I loved the beauty. And the other thing that I liked was that I felt like if I learned how to write at Cambridge, they would make me into some strange British author that I didn't want to be. And I knew what my voice was, and I didn't want it infected by the English course here, which is wonderful for people who want that, but it wasn't for me. And I wanted art history, and I wanted to see the images. I wanted it to help my brand on social media. I wanted it to make me happy, because I'm so rarely happy. And I wanted it to help me on social media.
And I guess aside from the way that art history helped you with composition and understanding the human experience, what do you think specifically being at Cambridge helped you in the way of writing and setting up this character?
It was everything. Like, honestly, if I had been rejected, I probably would have just like moved here and made friends.
Yeah.
Like, I know this sounds insane, truly, I do. And if I think it sounds insane, I can't even imagine how it must feel for you guys to hear this. But I've just always felt like my purpose was to make these books, these renegade books about Cambridge, and I've just never felt like I would be of service in any other way. I just always felt like this was the way I was going to make something important, and I just never doubted that. It's so strange. It sounds strange to me, so I know it's weird, but it's genuinely how I feel.
And with the way that you got into Cambridge, I think a lot of people here would say that it was quite a controversial way that you got into Cambridge, even though you were really determined to get in, right? And I guess thinking about that, I know a lot of people online talk about you getting your degree taken away, and that's up for debate. I don't think anyone here
They do?
is up.
Online?
Yeah, some people say. I was reading about it.
Really? Where?
Yeah. Well, I think it's what would your response be to people that say that you shouldn't have a degree from Cambridge because you photoshopped your grades?
All right, well, first of all, I got a 2-2 and not a third, so let's just start with that. But I also got a 50.0, which really shows that I nailed exactly the amount of work I needed to do to not get a third. And I think that is a skill that deserves an Oxbridge degree, because it was so fucking precise. But honestly, I think there's so many people who go to Cambridge just to advance their own wealth. Even if they're as their students, they think they'll do something artsy and wonderful, but they end up just making a job to make ends meet. And I feel like from the bottom of my heart, I am in this just to make art about mental illness and castles, we can't forget that, for other people. And I know that I feel like my Cambridge experience is in service to others.
Yeah, and I guess kind of touching a bit on that, right? I think, for a lot of people, they go to Cambridge to make ends meet because they kind of don't really have a choice, right? Like, they do need to make ends meet in some way. So I guess in terms...
I need to make ends meet.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Why are you not...
No, that's not a judgment on you. But
I'd rather do the art.
But kind of in terms of that, is there, I guess the question then is, has there ever been any moments where you have felt guilty about taking someone else's place?
I think that's a great question. And I actually looked into this because I thought you would ask me this exact question. I thought this would be the hardest question you asked me, and I assumed it was coming. So I did some research, and it's hard to say who deserves this place, like who wouldn't have a place at Cambridge otherwise that I would have taken. And I looked into the stats of the university. And right now, in 2023, 3 out of 10 students are Black or ethnic minority, someone who really wouldn't have a chance at Cambridge. But the year that I matriculated in 2013, it was 1 out of every 10 students that was Black or an ethnic minority. It was pre, the George Floyd riots. It was 2013. And I think if you held a gun to someone's head and said, do you think I took someone's spot in 2013, knowing that 1 out of every 10 was someone who might say was more deserving? I think most people would say no. And then on top of that, I would say there is no metric who says of what is deserving, even if someone who is unlikely to get a place at Cambridge, because it's so classist and it's so sexist and it's so racist. And even though I love it, it's sort of like a long-term partner for me. Like, if you love someone, you really want them to grow and be better. Like, you're not above criticizing them, but you still love them. That's how I feel towards Cambridge. And if you look at that, like, I think that I probably do more good with my books about suicide and castles than your average banker.
And talking about Cambridge, right, and how flawed Cambridge is, would you say that in your books you talk about Cambridge in terms of for an audience who isn't really familiar with Cambridge, right? It can seem like this romantic place with castles, as you said.
Oh, castles.
Yeah, I think, would you ever consider writing a book, not specifically about that touches on the experiences that you had at Cambridge, but more like pieces that touch on the flaws of Cambridge as an institution?
The floors?
The flaws of
Oh,
Cambridge.
the flaws.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a bit of accent trouble.
Yeah, I got it. You know, I would never write a manifesto, but as being a public figure was so much of my job is not just the books, it's events exactly like this. It's podcasts, it's interviews for papers. I think I speak very vocally about those flaws and have for years. And I think people just really pigeonhole me into somebody who just thinks Cambridge is amazing. Because I do say castles a lot. I mean, they're not wrong. Like, I am often saying castles, but I do talk about the fact that, like, did you know Cambridge, they like put on their stats, they're like, we're 50-50 men and women. But the way that that works, and I hope this makes it into the documentary, is that the way that this works is that there are some colleges that are only women, and most of those colleges are underfunded. They're lower on the Tompkins table. They're farther away from the center of town. And so you have these colleges that are like 100% women to offset the really good colleges with the beautiful architecture and the rare books and the libraries, which are like more like 39% women. And so the university can collect all of that data and say, like, we're totally for gender equality, but it's hiding these dark secrets. And I talk about this often, and I love talking about it. So, like, I am for the flaws, but I don't know if I would make a book about it. Like, a book is, I think I can do more good by talking about it in these sort of situations and on podcasts and on interviews than trying to publish a book taking Cambridge down. Like, I just don't think it would sell or, like, make a difference, you know?
And I guess when you're making choices about what you do next, and especially with what you might do after this, where do you kind of see the character of Caroline and Calloway ending up?
Great question. I'm so excited about this. So when I got to Florida, allegedly, I threw my passport in the ocean. No one knows. There's no way to ever tell, but my passport did disappear because I told myself that I would not leave the godforsaken state of Florida until I had written one book. And I finished that book, and I got a passport to come here. And now my rule is, until I finish the Instagram trilogy, which is one book. I don't know if you guys remember, but there was this girl who claimed she wrote my Cambridge captions and that I didn't help at all. But I'm gonna Taylor Swift the whole thing and re-record the album and just publish it under my name because I did all of that myself. Cambridge captions, a little essay responding to her essay, Instagram trilogy. And then I have 7 other what I call day books, books that can be read in a single day that I wanna publish while in Florida. And then after that, I'll tell you later. No, I have another idea after those 10 day books. But I'm just gonna churn them out and just make these really nice, strange books that you read in a day.
And I guess touching on the person that you're talking about, kind of in your response, how do you, when a lot of people claim a lot of things about you online, right? Like everyone, and I guess this is the same for anyone that interviews you and then writes articles about you. I think this happens a lot with a lot of public figures, that they claim to know things about you and to know you intimately, in a way that the general masses don't. How do you deal with the fact that there are these perceptions about you that just exist, but you necessarily don't always have control of your own narrative, right? Because of the fact that you are famous. And so there will always be you as kind of a person, but there will always be perceptions that other people have constructed that you are never able to kind of get past.
Totally. And my best advice to everyone here is that if you live for the compliment, you'll die going viral as a scam. You really have to have like an inner sense of, if everyone's telling you that you're this thing, whether it's on the internet or around you in person, you have to, even if it feels impossible, there's no other choice but to find the inner, like I feel very weak. Like sometimes I marvel at the fact that I was able to just like push through it, but you just have to find the inner resources to know that you're not that thing. But then if you publish a book and it gets great reviews and everyone loves the book, you also can't attach to those reviews. You really have to be
dignified.
No, just separate from it, just totally self-contained.
And when you see how well loved your book is, right, and compared to how other books that write about your stories may not be as well loved, how do you like separate yourself from feeling so satisfied with everything you've done?
No, I actually really lean into how the other books about me didn't do well, and listen, I'm petty. I'm super flawed, and I was happy that other books about me did not do well. And that's, something I'm working on with my therapist.
Do you think, but would you say that, is that pettiness something that you would say that you are kind of right in feeling, or you deserve that because of kind of how your life transpired after everything that went down?
Well, everyone's flawed. I write in my book, I have this line that I wanted to be a famous memoirist. Like that's sort of the thing I always wanted. But we want our famous people to be perfect. And we want our memoirists to be honest. And I think famous people being honest is really repulsive. Like we want our famous people to be role models, but we want our memoirists to be radically honest. And I think wanting to be a famous memoirist was a really tough goal.
And I guess talking about being a kind of famous memoirist, would you ever see yourself writing things that aren't necessarily memoirs or just general fiction? And if not, why?
Someday I'm gonna write a fantasy book about Oxbridge.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. After the 10-day books, I have a whole plan for it.
You can tell us more. You can give us the...
No, I'm worried some of you will take the idea because it's so good. Some of you know, and do not tell anyone. It's so brilliant. So I'm just going to keep it to myself.
But I guess with some people knowing things about you that other people don't, how do you kind of track what you tell people and what people share about you and what they don't? Do you ever find yourself going to your friends and being like, I really need you to not tell someone what I just told you? Or...
Yeah. I didn't have the documentary film Dinner at the Eagle. I want to chill with my friends for sure.
But do you find yourself in your close kind of circle, even just because you're someone that meets a lot of new people every day, right? A lot of people love you. Do you ever see that you do you ever find yourself not having to share things because you're scared that will come out and you didn't really have control over that narrative?
For sure. I definitely feel like sometimes the people that I'm around will ridicule me, and that is scary, but I just push through it.
That's really good. And I think we have about another 15 minutes, so I'm going to throw it to the audience.
Okay, great.
Some questions. So the way this will work is if you raise your hand, we'll get a mic to you as soon as possible. Raise your hands. I'll try and get to you as soon as possible.
Don't give it to the people
Yeah.
behind you. Do you see them? They're the ones who are always laughing.
Yeah, I'll try and get them. At the front there. Sorry, I think at the front there. With your hand up. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
I would like like to know, is there anything that you regret sharing online? Wait, should I have introduced myself? Hi, I'm Lucy. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Yeah, I regret a lot, honestly. I often say that, like, when I was 21 and in 2000, a freshman here, like first year, in 2013, I shared, like, my boyfriend's face on the internet, and I like wrote about our relationship, and I really feel like it was like smoking in the 50s. Like 2013, like we didn't know how bad Instagram was going to be and how it was going to affect our lives or how it would affect the relationship. And so I just put the whole relationship out there, not knowing what the long-term consequences would be. And I deeply regret that because I don't think that's really healthy for any relationship.
So then you did not get permission from Carl to share the information before sharing it?
No. It was very much a part, in a strange way, he loved it when we were together. I love that you called him Carl, and I appreciate that. In a strange way, we were so in love because he was from a middle-class family. His father drove trains. His mother taught biology. My father was on the brink of suicide. My mother worked for the government. And we were these two middle-class people who just loved poshness and wanted to be posh. And in a strange way, I didn't lie about Oscar. I didn't lie about Carl. He did play polo. He did know how to tilt a champagne flute so that you don't get too much fizz and you get more champagne. Like, he knew these things. But by leaving out the other stuff, I shaped the way that hundreds of thousands of people saw Carl. And in return, I shaped the way Carl saw himself. And in a very strange way, he loved becoming the person that I wrote. And in many ways, by the time we broke up 3 years later, he was more the character that he wanted to be didn't exist unless I was projecting it onto this giant theater of the world. And in a strange way, that kept us together. But it was not healthy, and I regret it.
That's kind of tea that you made him into something that he wouldn't have been otherwise.
Yeah.
Very powerful woman. Yeah, those are my statements.
We'll go right at the front there after you.
Hi, Caroline.
Hi.
Cody Christensen.
Hi.
I had a question about your book writing, style. Where did you do it? How did you do it? And then when you finished your memoir, did you have a moment of catharsis? Was it like a weight lifted off of you?
Yeah, I was actually with one of my friends from Cambridge. She was visiting me in Florida, and I was with my mom. And we were up in this tall condo that overlooked a bay, and there were dolphins that came up, and I felt so free. I couldn't believe that I finally, I just did the last chapter, and I sent it off to my favorite editor, and I sent that email, and then I was almost in a daze. I felt like I'd been concussed, honestly, and I just celebrated with my Cambridge friend and my mom, and I think we had champagne and went out to dinner, and it was just such a free. I really couldn't, no one is more shocked I finished a book than I am. I was in a daze. But that's what the end of the writing process was like. Zadie Smith once talks about, in this essay called That Crafty Feeling, that her favorite feeling in the world is after she finishes the book. She talks about this one time when it was I think it was fall in her back garden in London. She takes a bottle of Sancerre that she'd been saving, and she just drinks it after she's finished the last line. And I don't know if I had that floating around in my head when I was like, let's get champagne and I'll be dazed, but I was dazed, and that was how it was.
If we have hands back up, I think we'll go right at the back, over there.
Hi. I'm Lena.
Hi.
Hi. So you've been mired in controversy for a long time.
For sure, yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why you titled your book Scammer.
For sure.
But with the publishing of Scammer and with like the positive reviews it's gotten, like Scammer you are no longer. So I guess like with that, how has your perception of yourself changed? Like how does it feel to have like the institution change its perception of you? Like, I guess like how does it feel to have like achieved this goal that like people thought was sort of like out of reach for you for like a really long time?
That's such a nice question. And it feels really, honestly, it feels like I'm finally catching a break. Like my ex-best friend writes this article saying that she did the Cambridge brand, not me. The whole nation believes it. 2 days later, my dad's rotting body is found, suicide. Like, then COVID hits, grandma dies. Like, it's just, I just felt like for so long I could not catch a fucking break personally, even if publicly it seemed otherwise. And it's just, honestly, the good reviews, I know that I can't attach to them because otherwise when I get bad reviews, I'll attach to that. But I do have moments where I just think, I'm so grateful. Like, it's just so, I'm just so happy to just, the Washington Post was what was delivered to my house when I was little, and they called my first book a masterpiece, and they called me a lunatic, and I was like, you are totally correct about both of those things, and it just warmed my scammy heart. So thank you for asking that, because it feels good even to answer this question, and I appreciate it.
We'll go...
There's some over here where the microphone is.
Yeah, we could do over there.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Alex. In the Vice interview, I was really struck by like what you talk about how you bought a bunch
Wait, can you
of...
hold the mic closer to your mouth?
Oh yeah, sorry. Is it working
Yeah.
now? Thanks. You talk about how you bought a bunch of memoirs and biographies of people and read them in preparation for your book Scammer. And I just thought it was such a striking image. And I wondered how that affected the writing process, if at all.
Yes, I would say the number one memoirs that I was reading was Argonauts by Maggie Nelson and In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. And strangely, I was not reading Joyce, but the two things that I reference in Scammer are Joyce's quote about the snow falling faintly and faintly falling, and Carmen Maria Machado's Milky Portal. And they were just strange. I didn't read Joyce, but those were the things that were floating around in my head. I actually hate Ulysses, so I am just like, I don't even know. But that's what was in the mind. It was Argonauts, Machado, and Joyce.
Thank you.
And Sarah Mancuso, who was one of my teachers, and David Lipsky, who were my two teachers at NYU. They were just, their words were, their guidance as teachers were so impactful. Like they were my first good teachers. That's a really great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any hands? We'll go over there.
Hi, my name's Rosie. I also do history of art.
No way, that's amazing. What year are you?
First year, at the very beginning.
First year? Oh my
Yeah.
God, incredible. Are you
That's
doing the whole, like,
exciting.
have you traveled to like a country house of some random duke?
We've been to Ely. We've not yet been to.
Do
a
they
country
still have
house.
the bus? Are they putting you in the bus?
I have not seen this bus yet. No.
Okay, well, it's November. You still might see the bus. Like,
Fingers
it's only
crossed.
been like truly like 6 weeks that you've been here. That's
Exactly.
crazy. Where are you from?
Where am I from? Manchester.
Oh, Mancunian.
Yeah, exactly. So I've got a question about the question that you prepared for, because I felt like we didn't spend enough time on that. And you were talking about the act of getting in through fraudulating your transcripts, I think is the best way to say it. And I think I've got 2 points. The first one being, I'd like it if you could elaborate on the significance of George Floyd and like black students, because you mentioned that, and the like 1 out of 10 versus 3 in 10 now. And also kind of being at Cambridge at the beginning, I know how like a lot of people suffer from imposter syndrome here, and that's having even got in legitimately.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
A lot of people here struggle from imposter syndrome.
Yes.
It's a constant stress. How did you deal with imposter syndrome in your time here?
Elaborating on the George Floyd protests, I feel like I am not the person to speak on it. On imposter syndrome, I do feel like an absolute goddamn expert. Every day that I was here, I felt like I didn't belong. And to this day, Cambridge is the city that inspires me most, but it's not the city where I feel like I belong. And I always thought through my first year and second year and third year that like maybe it would change. But like even being invited to speak at the union the second time, I feel so grateful and so lucky.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We might throw it over to this side. We'll go over there. Yeah, go.
Can you get them thrown?
Yeah, so they won't get to that.
Hi, I'm Beatrice.
Oh my God, your outfit is amazing. Holy shit.
Oh my God.
What a sleigh.
Thank you.
Oh my God, the belt?
Thank you. Can I put that on my Instagram bio that you complimented my outfit?
Oh my God, like let's take a video. I'll just like we'll make a grid post of it. I feel passionately about this outfit.
Oh my God, then I will definitely chase you up on that.
Okay, well there's an after party.
Oh yeah,
in the cellars.
I'll definitely be there.
Yeah, I'll see you there.
Anyway, I was interested when you talked earlier about like the radical frontiers of honesty that people are demanding out of like social media celebrities nowadays, and particularly later on when you were talking about how like again there's a certain level that almost we don't want to know about like people we admire and look up to and like follow. Do you think particularly with the sort of increased like atomization and secularization of celebrity from platforms like TikTok?
Whoa. Atomization and secularization of celebrity. You lost me. I was totally with you. And then I was
so
like,
increasingly it seems to me as though like, for lack of a better word, you are one of a kind in the sense of everyone on Instagram knew who you were. Yet nowadays, particularly with like influencer culture and stuff, that feels to be less of a problem. Like we have influencers incredibly relevant to our specific communities, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. No. It's so great that like the internet has grown to service everyone.
Well, I guess my question is then, to what extent then do you think that not only, like, do you think there's further depths to plunge, or do you think that we're actually going to see a trend backwards towards like this sort of mega celebrity that everyone on social media knows?
No, I think social media will just grow so that it just, I mean, when I was posting pictures, like, it was radical in 2013, and I'm so glad that I was part of that frontier of vulnerability, and I'm so glad now that we're talking about, like, everything from cancer to divorce to treating wounds to stomas to just trying to think of my, like, TikTok algorithm and, like, all the different shit I see. Yeah. I think that's great, and I encourage it, and I think it will just grow larger, but, like, people will find their niche, and I think that's great.
Yeah.
And I love your outfit, is the biggest point I want to make.
Honestly, I'll take that.
Yeah. In conclusion, the outfit slayed.
In conclusion, the outfit slays, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, that's all that matters, for sure.
I think we have time for 2 more questions, so I'm going to let you pick the last 2.
Okay, why don't we do the one right next to the outfit that slayed so hard?
Oh, thank you.
Oh my God, is your outfit about to slay so hard?
Hi, Caroline.
Your flowers in your hair, I love them. They look
Thank
so
you so
good.
much. They're from Good Squish, not sponsored. Hi, I'm Claire. I was going to ask, it's an age of do it for the plot, right?
What?
It's an age of do it for the
Yes.
plot. I am also guilty as charged. I will definitely do something for the story.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you, in a hypothetical sense, could never have been perceived as having done any of the things that you did at Cambridge, or never have done them in real time on Instagram. Do you think you still would have lived the life that you lived as you did? And would it have the same power as a memoirist?
You mean like if I'd lived it pre-Instagram or in a different
as in if you had
age?
lived it in a way
no,
that it
I
couldn't be
often
shared.
think that I was born in the right age. Like if I were born in medieval times, I would be like writing about what I did today and like handing it out in the Times Square, being like, a small story about my life. Would you like it? It's very good. I really believe in the voice of this writing. Like it would be awful. And in the same way that you look back at, for me, I see it most with like women or women of color who really tried to make art but were just suffocated. I know I'm just looking at it through a gendered lens, but that's what really speaks to my heart. I just think of the people, the women who weren't allowed to be educated, who weren't allowed to have time to write because they did all the chores, who weren't allowed to like have their writing preserved because they were women and they just like threw it out and it wasn't important. I feel so lucky that I was born in a social media age. And I just, you know, I often feel like the thing that I want to be most, I say famous memoirist, but like the thing that I actually want to be, I don't know the word for. It's like more performance art for the plot. It's more online than famous memoirist really in capsules, and I'm just waiting for the right word. And your friends are filming so hard, it's actually crazy.
I don't have fans, I just have really supportive friends.
Are you with the documentary people? Like, what's happening?
No, I just am chronically online like you.
Should we do one last question?
Yes, one last.
Let's do one over. Okay. Well, okay. Let's do this one. Neha, I need them kicked out the front. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kat.
I love your hair as well.
Thank you.
Oh my God.
Same scrunchie. I've been following you for a very long time, ever since like you went to Cambridge, and I was just say I've seen your whole journey, but also I think I've seen like the massive growth of like kind of like also alongside a lot of people who are very much supporting you, like this huge parasocial community who are sort of commenting on your every move. And I just wanted to ask, like, how did that make you act any differently? How did you make sure that you like protected yourself from that? Because I know you talked about it a bit in your Vice documentary, but it must have been like very crazy to have people sort of screenshotting and posting constantly everything you're doing.
Yeah. The Reddit that writes about me really bothered me for a long time, years, and it just felt like this strange sort of infection that I would impose on other people. Like if I wanted to tag a friend in my story, I would like hurt their career. Like I was just even loving me was like an imposition to everyone around me because of what I would bring into their life. And that really weighed on me and made me feel very isolated. But what really helped me about the Vice documentary that we made is that for 3 days, actually like 3 days solidly, we got this burner phone and we put like a burner phone number on the Reddit. I like took a photo with like the date, like a ransom, like sort of like hostage. I was like, today's paper and me, like it's me, call this number. We put this on the Reddit and we spent like 3 days. I know the documentary is like, I don't know, 20 minutes, maybe less. But we spent 3 days just calling these people up nonstop, just people. And I really thought one of two things would happen. I thought they would either be like weirdly sycophantic when they met me, or I thought they would be just like very cruel to my face and just be like sort of like yelling as soon as I picked up the phone or just like really mean. And the strangest thing happened was that I would say 3 days solid, I felt like my job was just like a telecommunicator. Like I was, almost every single person just wanted to talk about their own problems and what they were going through and their own sadness and what happened to them. And it really made me realize that like, I wish they didn't hate me, but at least that gives them a sense of community. And if they don't like me, that's a really solid opinion that they know won't get criticism. And it just made me have a lot more empathy for them than I did before. And it really like healed a part of me because I felt like for the first time I understood where they're coming from.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Also, I think it's like most of them were women. Like it was very like a female community. It was very
What? Can you speak into the
like
microphone?
most of them were women, so it was like a very like bizarre, like just like you're saying.
I just felt like they were so lonely, and like I'm lonely too, and like I want friends, and like they wanted friends, and like they just wanted to talk to me about their problems, and like they wanted to talk about their problems with other people in the community, and it just seemed like they were just looking for companionship, and I just found that very relatable.
Yeah. Nice to hear you. Very forgiving.
Thank you so much. I actually have one last question for you.
Last question.
We ask all of our guests this.
Okay.
But as someone who's kind of been through it, through Cambridge, you're kind of now on the other side. To students at the university and to the members in this audience, I guess, what are 3 pieces of advice you would give us in terms of the next few years?
Okay, great question. Number 1, no one talks about how sad it is to be here. Like, I feel like everyone feels like they're so lucky to be here that it's really taboo to be like, I hate it, because you worked so hard to get here and everyone worked so hard to get here. The number 1 thing I would say is that you are not alone in your sadness. Even if you decide not to talk about it with your friends, just know that I felt that intense sadness, and you're not strange for feeling it, and you're not, I don't know, doing Cambridge wrong. Like, I just wish that people talked more about how hard this place is. That's my number 1 advice. Number 2, the people who you think are popular, who are like gonna decide the rest of your life, you're never gonna see them again. Like, truly, like, you're never going to see them again, and they will go bald. Like, 100% of the people who bullied me have no hair. And that's karma. That's on karma. So, listen, the people who you think are popular, who like sort of decide your life or decide what's cool or decide, I don't know, things about you, they truly don't matter. After these 3 years, you're never gonna see them again. And my last piece of advice would be to know that the friends that will really stick with you, even if you drift apart from them a little bit, or I don't know, go in different careers, it's strange the way that you find yourself, you find each other again. And I would just say not to stress about the friends that you'll make down the road, because in the same way, it's almost like friend buoyancy. Like, the friends who are there will just naturally rise to the top, and you don't need to worry about, I don't know. The real people who will be there for you will maybe not be the people you expect, but they will be there for you. And that would be my last piece of advice.
Thank you so much. That was really good advice.
Thank you so much.
Once again, thank you so much to everyone for joining us and for taking your evening out to hear Caroline speak. As I had mentioned at the start of the event, we'll be doing a social downstairs in the cellars. Caroline After Dark, that's just all the way...
No. It's not called that. It's not called that. It's called the colloquium, like the order, but like Calloway. It's called the colloquium. It's not called Caroline After Dark.
We agree to this.
And there will be Aperol spritzes with elderflower in it, which is a drink I really approve of.
If you just follow the signs downstairs. Thank you so much.
Okay, are you gonna go kick them out?